Hello, listeners. Welcome to our podcast, CARS24 Talkies. After an amazing season 1 last year, we are back with season 2. I'm your host, Swaraj, and today we have with us Sudhir Shukla, Chief Marketing Officer at CARS24 India. Sudhir is a sales and marketing professional with an experience across FMCG, media, and consumer technology sectors. His expertise lies in P&L management, growth strategy formulation, annual sales, and operating plan foundation and execution, and basically all aspects of modern consumer marketing and growth. So, hi Sudhir, welcome to Cars 24 podcast.
Hi, Swaraj. Very excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Sudhir. So, Sudhir, before I start my round of questions and answers, I'll want to actually know from you, if you were the interviewer, what would be basically the first question you would ask to the CMO of Cars 24?
I think the first question very interesting question. So I think the first thing I would like to ask the CMO of Cars24 is it really possible to get people to buy cars online? Because when I started my conversations and I started thinking about the organization, I was actually very simply put blown away by the fact that now something like something as high value as a car is getting transacted online. So I would love to hear more about that. I would have loved to hear more about that from the CMO.
Sure. And if that is the question, what is the answer then?
I think obviously there are trends and consumer trends, and I think the recent 2 years and the pandemic especially, right, has
Yeah, yeah,
accelerated digital adoption in a big way across categories. So I
yeah.
think while the pandemic has, of course, been a challenge for everyone, I would say that digital adoption is definitely one of the silver linings, and I think we are seeing a big uptick in people's openness to transact, I think, online, even for something which is as high value as as a car,
All right.
right? And
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I
Yeah.
think Cars24 is definitely a pioneer in the space. There are, I would say, a plethora of initiatives and offers for the consumers to make sure that, look, I think honestly, the space has been plagued with information asymmetry, right? When you want to buy a
Yes, yes.
pre-used car, you're actually never sure whether what you're buying is of high quality and whether you're getting the right price, and whether you've seen enough cars before you made the choice. And I think
Hmm.
that's what we're able to do, and we're able to do at scale. So I think our investment in technology, our investment in making sure that the right assortment is available to people, our investment in providing the highest quality car with initiatives like Mega Refurbishment Lab, all of that actually has come together, and the pandemic has really helped accelerate some of the consumer adoption.
Great, great. So, Sudhir, of course, we'll go into business and marketing more. But my first question would be, so you have joined Cars 24 very recently. My question is, what made you choose Cars 24?
Yes, actually, so I think fundamentally, Swaraj, I think I am somebody who's very excited about, for me, brands is equal to business. So that's something that
Yeah.
I've enjoyed through my career. And
Hmm.
I must say that I've been very lucky to work on, some big legacy brands and solve some interesting problems. But
Yeah.
as I reflected back on my experience, I could fit it in two buckets, right? I was either working on established businesses, right? And
Yeah.
there was an issue and I was helping them come back on track, or I was
Hmm.
taking medium-sized businesses or brands and scaling them up in my stints
Yeah.
at Mondelez and Star.
Hmm.
But I really wanted to also have an opportunity to create a brand at some point.
Hmm.
And I was really impressed by the founder's vision to create the largest automobile company in India,
Yeah.
and the fact that within 6 years, the founders have managed to create $1 billion ARR business, and that just blew my mind. So I was
Hmm.
very enthused and energized by my conversations with Vikram, Mehul, Gaju, and Kunal, and the opportunity to create a brand and create the largest automobile company in India was just it just seemed like too good an opportunity to miss, and I just decided to jump into the car.
Yeah. Great, great. So, Sudhir, you have been into marketing over a decade now, and like you said, you've worked with Mondelez and Star. So, tell me, is marketing in an FMCG versus media versus auto tech? So, how different are they from each other, and even are they even different?
Interesting question, Swaraj. I think as I reflect on that, I would say the answer it's yes and no, because fundamentally the job of marketing, in my view, is always integrating multiple work streams in an organization to make consumers' decision making simple. How
Hmm.
can we get people to buy the product in the simplest and the most convenient way possible, right?
Yeah.
So there is an element of the consumer and the consumer behavior, and there is an
Hmm.
element of the business. So I think the consumer part of it remains same, whether you work in FMCG, media, or auto tech, right?
Hmm.
But obviously there is an element of the category you operate in, and that can change the dynamics. And let me
Hmm. Hmm.
illustrate through maybe a couple of examples.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So I think if I look back at my Cadbury stint, or what Mondelez as
Yeah.
it is now known, I think the organization, is known for great advertising, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But in that organization's growth, uh, actually the largest growth lever was the deployment of refrigerators in the market, which I think
Yeah.
most of us would have seen, right? Because a
Yeah. Yeah.
chocolate is best enjoyed cold and crisp,
When it is
right?
cold. Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
melt in a
Hmm.
tropical country like India,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so now this was what I learned in marketing there, saying, okay, the advertising is good, but to procure the coolers, it's called Visi coolers in that company. So to procure the
Yeah.
Visi coolers and deploy them and make sure
Yeah.
that they don't break down and to make sure that they don't get stolen and to audit them
Hmm.
every month is as important a part of building the brand and business, right?
Yeah.
As I worked on sports, and I personally am somebody who plays a lot of sport and I love sports, right? So when I worked in media and I worked at Star Sports, I think, of course, it was around making sure that there's high quality campaigns and consumer insight work going out. But the biggest unlock in growing television ratings came from making sure that the scheduling of the matches was right, right?
Hmm.
So matches on Saturdays and Sundays rate 30% higher than weekday matches.
Hmm. Hmm.
So very
Yeah.
simply put, if you've got in IPL a Mumbai versus Chennai match, it is better to have it on a weekend than on a weekday,
Yeah.
right? And that became a big growth lever, coupled with how many channels are we able to put it on, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
of course, we adopted the strategy of occasionally, let's say, going outside the sports network, and we would, use the might of the Star network to maximize consumption, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
now these are like I said, of course, there is an element of the consumer, but there is a category dynamic. I
Hmm.
would say,
Hmm.
as I look back at my last 3 months in auto tech, there is obviously a much greater interdependency and collaboration with product and technology teams, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And for that, a meaningful understanding of their worlds is very, very critical.
Yeah.
So I would say for the first time, I feel like whatever investments I had made in 4 years of electronics engineering is being of some use.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think being a tech business, things also move really, really fast. And I
Yeah.
think the business cycles are shorter. Consumer behavior can change very quickly. We saw that, let's say in how quickly things changed in January versus December as the
Yeah.
third wave peaked,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's very important to, adapt and course correct very, very quickly in let's say what we do today in auto tech versus FMCG and media.
Yeah. 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 So, like you said correctly, in India, there is how like the consumer. So it depends a lot on what the consumer is basically thinking. So, so they tell me, when you are comparing say a low cost product, say like say a chocolate versus a very high valued product, say buying a car, how does marketing play a role in making the consumer think in a way of buying a certain product? So obviously marketing, like we said, for a low cost product you can advertise and you can create a TOMA, top of the mind awareness for people. Like what how does it change in case of a high valued product like cars?
Yeah, very interesting question again, Swara. So I think as I look back at it, and I think maybe the Cadbury and the Cars24 parallel is a great parallel.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at what Cadbury has tried to achieve over the years, and I think it all fundamentally boils down to what is coming in the way of people buying chocolates and what
Hmm.
is coming in the way of people buying cars from Cars24,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, I think obviously the great work that Cadbury has managed to do was just to tell people that chocolates is not just for kids. Actually, chocolate is just like any other mithai,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And that's what has given I mean, it's given that company enormous growth and uh, allowed them to make a lot of money,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So it was fundamentally about defining or repositioning chocolate as a meetha.
Yeah.
And that has happened through obviously great products, but it's also happened through some great insights and communications work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
कुछ मीठा हो जाए or Shubharam or all the work that Cadbury managed to do, in the last 2 decades or so has actually accelerated the adoption of chocolates in India.
Hmm. Hmm, hmm.
And you'd be amazed at how much opportunity that company still sees. I mean,
Yeah.
very simply put, people in UK per capita consumption of chocolate is 10 kilos per person per year.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
In India, if I remember correctly, till about 6 7 years back, that number was about I think less than 200 grams
Hmm,
per
hmm, hmm.
person per year.
Yeah.
Now, in a similar way, if you look at pre-used car buying today, pre-used car buying in India is a $25 billion opportunity,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yes.
And people are already transacting offline. I think our task is to just tell them that Cars24 is the best place to buy pre-owned cars,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Uh, it's not actually very different from repositioning chocolate as a part of the Meetha universe,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you look at it from a consumer standpoint.
Hmm. Hmm,
And
hmm.
actually, all the actions that we have taken are actually trying to just build Cars24 as the best destination to buy pre-used cars, isn't it? So
Correct.
whether
Correct.
it's the 140-point quality checks we do, which talk about quality, whether it's the mega refurbishment labs, which once again talk about how obsessed we are with quality, whether
Hmm.
it's, let's say, consumer finance, right, to
Hmm.
make sure that people who are trying to upgrade from two-wheelers to a pre-used car have finance available, right,
Yeah.
and they are able to kind of opt for it.
Yeah.
Or
Hmm.
even if it's, let's say, very simple, but I think very powerful policies like 7-day return, no questions asked, and 6-month warranty. All
Yeah.
of these are just aimed singularly to tell people that if you want to buy a pre-used car, there is no better place than Cars24.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Sure. Sure.
I see from a marketing perspective, I see them as very similar tasks. I
Yeah.
think it's about how can we do it in a manner which is effective, how can we do it at scale, and how can we make sure that what we communicate is actually what consumers experience on ground.
Yeah. So, Sudhir, like you said about, say Cadbury's, when, a chocolate, maybe like a Dairy Milk or a Cadbury, an entire category is known by that. Say, even if you are not buying, say, a particular brand, but you are going to a, say, retail store and saying, Bhaiya Cadbury dijiye. Same if you are not buying, say, a particular brand of ramen, you say, Bhaiya Maggi dijiye. Do you think we as a brand can, be known in the used car market as something like a Cars 24, even if you are not buying that brand? Can we do that in our industry?
I certainly would like to believe so,
Yeah.
Swaraj. I think that's the goal that we should all have. We should, as an organization, I think the goal is to make pre-used cars synonymous with Cars24,
Hmm.
so that if someone wants to buy a pre-owned car online or offline, Cars24 is what they think about. So absolutely, I think that's the higher order goal that at least we are chasing in marketing.
Okay. So, Sudhir, tell me, you have been working, I think, with campaigns a lot with these brands. So, tell me, how do you decide what is exactly going to work and what is not? Of course, you do your consumer study, you do a lot of research goes behind it. But how do you, suppose after a campaign is rolled out, how do you measure that is your campaign working among the audience or not?
So I think, Swaraj, on this, every initiative. So I think the way to kind of think about it is ultimately there is a business goal or
Yeah,
objective,
yeah,
right? And marketing is one of the levers to achieve that business goal,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think the ultimate measure remains what's the impact on business?
Hmm.
How much are we able to drive growth, and how much are we able to attribute that growth to our efforts, right? So that remains in some ways a very simple framework on how do you measure success of marketing and how do you measure success of campaigns, which are a part of marketing
Yeah,
ultimately.
yeah.
Marketing today that we kind of do would have, let's say, campaigns. It would have CRM efforts. It would have initiatives on from the growth teams, right?
Hmm.
It would have performance marketing. All of that needs to drive growth.
Hmm.
And I think there is no dearth of data, especially in our business in today's world, right?
Yeah.
So, with data, we can understand consumer behavior, we can minimize risks in marketing efforts.
Hmm.
But there are two things which I would like to share with you
Yeah.
in terms of how to decide what's going to work and what is not. I think one is a very simple principle which is followed. I think it's a very standard principle across the industry, which is called 70-20-10 resourcing principle, right?
Hmm.
So 70% of the investment must go in tried and tested and high ROI
Yeah.
activities, right? 20% should go into things that are emerging and there is reasonable confidence that they will have success in the future.
Yeah.
And 10% of the resourcing must go to absolutely crazy and innovative ideas. And we are okay even if they fail,
Hmm.
right?
All right.
And that allows you to make sure that you're also discovering newer things ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
newer ways to do things, innovative ways to do things ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
So that's one principle which I always like to keep in mind while deciding what's going to work or not, right? So I'm happy to put 10% into completely crazy ideas.
Yeah.
The second principle, which is something that I learned once again in my initial days as a brand manager at Cadbury, which is around good people learn from their mistakes, but better people learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think in a simple way, Cadbury was lucky to have there's so many brands.
Yeah.
There is Cadbury, Five Star, Bonvita, Perk, Gems, right?
Hmm.
And there's so much work happening across. And as somebody who would, I mean, we would work on our respective brands, but it's always good to ask other people what they're doing and what's not working for them,
Hmm.
right? So, an element of external benchmarking, right? And building networks with peers, let's say, who are solving similar problems to also learn from them. Because chances are that if a media platform or a media technology or a tie up or a partnership has not worked for a e-commerce brand,
Hmm.
then chances are it may not work for us. So it's just good to keep
Keep.
those
Yeah.
conversations with peers. Yes, keep learning from other people's experiences, and that also further helps refine how you invest and how you decide what's going to work or not.
True, true, absolutely. So, Sudhir, also, since in the last 2 years, a lot of things have changed, and we are still obviously in a pandemic. So, how do you think, marketing and advertising have changed over the last 2 years in terms of how we are spending in, say, print or TV or OH, and even as simple as, maybe a communication change that you have seen or experienced. So, how this has changed over the 2 years?
Yes, I think there has been a bit of a change and recalibration as a result of the pandemic, Swaraj.
Hmm.
I think in my experience as I saw it as a marketer, the first wave was really the toughest,
Yeah.
right? Because complete uncertainty, complete mayhem. You did not know what's going to happen. Of course, I know people who just stopped ordering newspapers because there was a theory to say that it's maybe the
Transfer.
pandemic
Yeah.
spreads through touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's, and I think The first wave was really tough, and I think a lot of, I would say, mediums like print and radio and outdoor possibly suffered.
Hmm.
I think marketing, just to go back, is all about basically, engaging with consumers wherever they are available.
Yeah.
So, post first wave, I think television and digital possibly became the go-to mediums.
Hmm.
But I think now pandemic is also, it's been around for 2 years, and I see that in the third wave, especially now, if you look at it, you know, I think one people, and it possibly got to do with the resilient human spirit. So people have also started taking it in their strides.
Hmm.
And I don't think the current marketing mix is as different as it was at the end of the first
Yeah.
wave. So, people are investing in print. People are, let's say the print circulations are back to, in most cases, 80 to 90% of what they were before the first wave, right?
Hmm.
There are people who are investing in brands which are investing in radio because all you need to do is just take your car and go for a 1 kilometer spin anywhere in India, right? You'll see how much traffic is there on the roads,
Hmm.
which was not the case in the first
Yeah.
wave. So, I think that it's not really now it doesn't feel like a very big change
Hmm.
in terms of the marketing mix and the mediums. It was more so the case at the end of first wave,
Hmm.
Raj. I think right now it's business as usual.
Yeah, but you think there are still any apprehensions that the marketers or advertisers today find in terms of, maybe not preferring one medium over the other in terms when they think where their consumers lie?
Uh, Not so much, worry, but I would say obviously there is a constant need to make sure that the media mix is calibrated, and we are catching the consumer in the right places in their journey,
Hmm.
right? When they are buying or deciding how to buy products.
Yeah,
And I think you would earlier asked a question around, you know, any communication change
yeah.
that has kind of
Hmm.
happened, and once again, I think there is obviously, like I said, and I'll share an example where changing a preset pattern actually worked very well for me, and this was, I think, around IPL. So obviously, there is a huge element of topicality and what consumers are experiencing at any given point of
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. Mm.
And I remember that when the first IPL happened, and actually the IPL got postponed, right, because of the pandemic. And instead of happening in March or April like it does, it happened in September.
Hmm.
So it was like a full 6, 7 month
Yeah,
delay. And I think for the first time, in our brand building, we decided not to talk about the sport, but only talk about how IPL is such a great time
bond.
to come together with
Yeah,
your
yeah,
friends and
yeah.
family.
I think there was a
Uh,
campaign released which did quite well for, I think, Star
yeah,
Sports, I think, where there.
it was called Ek Saath
Yeah,
Wali Baat.
correct, correct. Yes.
So it was basically that the pandemic has been so tough on everyone. Everyone has been cooped up in their
Yeah,
houses and not met friends, family, and just not had basic human
yeah.
interaction.
Bonding. Yeah.
And we basically said, look, yeah, it's not going to change. You still be at home. But when you're going to be supporting Chennai Super Kings
Hmm.
from the confines of your home, you're still a part of a larger team.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
it's about coming together over sport, which actually did very well.
Hmm.
It was possibly the most successful campaign we did,
Yeah, yeah.
with and largely driven by the fact that the overriding consumer sentiment at that point was more about
The
the lack
lost
of
touch.
human touch
Yeah.
that people were
Mm.
feeling, and yeah, not about the sport.
Good.
So
Yeah.
I think that's one example I can think of where changing the pattern and being topical really helped.
Cool, cool. So, Sudhir, like you, since you're quoting so many examples, I just want to know. So, tell me one work which is the closest to your heart over the years, like which will always remain with you, and you will be like always be most proud of.
It's a tough one.
Huh.
As a marketer, you're so invested into
Yeah.
your campaigns, but I think there is one where I think most definitely, I learned a lot working on that campaign, and that campaign also produced very strong business results, which is why it's all the more satisfying. So I had in 2012, I got an opportunity to work on one of the most loved brands in food called
Yeah.
Bonvita. Now, chances are, if you've grown up in India across, especially in the north and west,
Mm-hmm.
chances are that you would have been served a glass with Bonvita at some
Mm.
point by your
Yeah.
parents. And you would have enjoyed it. It's a very tasty drink. Remains a tasty drink in the category even today, I think, if I'm not
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
mistaken,
Yeah.
given the Cadbury
Mm.
credentials. But of course, the brand was having a bit of a challenge. The other players in the category, like Horlicks and Complan, came from legacy pharmaceutical companies, and there were very strong functional claims attached to what they were doing, right? So Complan used to say 3 times
Mm-hmm.
height. Horlicks would say something around holistic growth,
Yeah.
etc. Now, and Cadbury, of course, is not in a position to make any of those
Mm.
claims, given that it was a
Chocolate.
chocolate
Yeah. Mm.
manufacturer, and that was the strength. And fundamentally, there was nothing in the product, right? So we said, okay, how can we still propel the brand and kind of grow it, and what's the right approach, and what can help us grow the brand?
Mm.
And I think a lot of consumer work done at that point threw up some very interesting learnings, right? I think, and I'm talking about 2012. So this is just when social media and digital was coming into its
Yeah.
own, right? This is the time that Google was becoming and searches were becoming big and blogs were becoming big,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think parenting communities were starting to become big things at that point of
Mm.
time. And I think so. A couple of interesting trends that kind of help shape some of the thinking on the brand. I think the first big thing was classically in India, the relationship between a parent and a child has always seemed to be it's always seemed to be like a sugary relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Parents dote on their children, and children respect and love parents back, right? That's the conventional portrayal
Yeah.
of that relationship. And I think the interesting thing was at that point of time, we realized that in most cases, especially in the urban centers, parents were beginning to feel a lot of pressure because in most cases, there was a movement from joint families to nuclear
Mm-hmm.
families. And that's a trend which has only become
Yeah.
steeper now, right? 10
Mm-hmm.
years later. And what was happening was obviously nobody's equipped to be a good parent. I mean, in the previous scenarios, you would learn a lot from having your parents at home or some elders at home who would tell you how to bring up
Mm.
children, right? It can be a emotionally draining exercise
Yeah.
otherwise. So parents, when they looked at the children and were experiencing high levels of anxiety, and they were saying, boss, the child is like my report card, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? If the child is thin, I am taken to be a bad
Yeah.
parent, that I'm not doing a good
Mm-hmm.
job. If the child does not get enough marks, then it's the parent's
Yeah.
problem,
Mm-hmm.
etc., etc. And in this process, parents were putting so much pressure that children were obviously not liking it. And I think obviously no child in the age group of 10 to 15 wants to be told what to wear, what to do, how
Mm.
much to
Yeah.
study,
Mm-hmm.
whom to
Yeah.
meet,
Yeah.
right? So there was like a enhanced friction at that point, and it actually was a very interesting opportunity for brands which were able to offer a win-win solve,
Yeah.
right? So Bonvita was one of those win-win solves, right? Because parents wanted to give children milk, and Bonvita was able to make it tasty.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire idea of the campaign that we then, so as we were looking at this parallel, we realized that it's actually very similar to the dynamic that exists between a coach and an athlete.
Yeah.
And if you read a couple of interesting autobiographies, let's say there's one on Rafa, there's Open by Agassi, you will see about how sport champions have always spoken about the fact that, they hated their
Mm.
coaches in the formative stages, but they only,
Realized later,
realized
huh?
the value of what was happening
Yeah.
later. So this is what we call the you will thank me for it later
Mm.
syndrome in
Huh.
parenting,
Yeah.
right? I'll be tough today, and it's okay if the child doesn't like me, but they will thank me for it later. And I think that all of this thinking became like the bedrock of Tayari Jeet
Mm-hmm.
Ki, which is the campaign and the platform that we put out at that point of
Yeah.
time. And Tayari Jeet Ki was, I don't know if you, Swaraj and Simran, have
Yeah.
seen
Yeah. We
that.
have. We have.
You're very young, so you may have not seen some of that work. But our opening and one of the first pieces of communication that we put out was around a mother that races with the
Yeah.
child
Yeah.
and doesn't
It.
allow him
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
win.
We have seen. We have seen that. Yeah.
because and that was just so different in terms of how Indian parents are. So it was at that point of time, it got a lot of conversation, eyeballs, but I think eventually landed up, doing what it was intended to do in a very functional category. Helped us build a very emotional positioning. And as a result of that campaign, plus a lot of other work around new launches and
Yeah.
everything else that we did, price pack architecture, we managed to move Bonvita from a number three player to a very strong number two player,
Good, good.
taking over
Yeah.
Complan. So that's a campaign that's very close to heart, and
Great, great.
that's something that I'm always
Yeah.
going to feel very
Yeah,
good
yeah,
about.
it was a lovely campaign. So there's so much of work is going around, with so many brands. So there is something which is like which a lot of brands are banking upon today is meme marketing and moment marketing. So I would just want to know what is your thoughts on these.
It is the most spoken about aspect of marketing
Yeah,
today,
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? The moment and meme marketing, and I jokingly keep telling people that thanks to meme marketing, I think there is generally a feeling amongst everyone that anyone can do marketing,
Yeah,
right? What is there to be done is just a meme. It's an interesting meme that needs to be
yeah,
cracked. So let me tell you a very interesting story, Swaraj. I think meme marketing or moment marketing is, by the way, I mean, it's been happening since
yeah,
2012, if
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken, right? And the most famous example, and this was a brand that Mondelez owned. So it was actually started by a brand called
Mm-hmm.
Oreo. Now, in 2012 or 13, I'm forgetting the year, but one of the 2 years for sure, there is Super Bowl in America, right?
Correct.
And Super Bowl is like the mother of all television
Correct.
events, right? They have NFL, and in a single day, all major NFL teams play
Mm-hmm.
against each other. So it's basically, I mean, it's basically like saying that it's bigger. It is the biggest day on television anywhere
Mm-hmm.
in the world, very
Mm-hmm.
simply speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course there is sport, but there is also a performance before the match. There is a mid-show
Mm-hmm.
performance, and I think big stars like Britney Spears and Jennifer Lopez, and the world
Yeah.
congregates
Yeah.
and performs there, right? So it's really a back-to-back sport plus entertainment, and it's a mad thing in
Mm.
America, right? Uh, and during the mid ceremony, lights
Yeah.
went out. There was
Uh,
power failure
uh,
in the stadium, and that's when Oreo tweeted saying you can still dunk in the dark,
yeah, yeah.
because Oreo's proposition was all around twist, click, and
Mm-hmm.
dunk. I think it still remains the highest ROI tweet in the history of Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's the most retweeted, most shared, and I think it kind of led to this entire thing about how can you make the most of the moment. Now, let me also tell you how that
Mm-hmm.
happened, right? So it was not just a chance or fluke. It was about there was a war room. There was like 20 people in that war room. There were brand managers, there were copywriters, there were people from the legal and compliance
Mm-hmm.
teams, right? And basically, the entire process of writing a campaign and getting it approved happened within a span of five
Mm-hmm.
minutes. And by the way, Oreo had been doing it for five
Mm.
years
Yeah. Yeah.
till that date. So it took all that effort to culminate
One
into
tweet.
one
Yeah.
tweet, which has then obviously, which is still being remembered, let's say 10, 15
Yeah.
years out, right? I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it today. And that's the proof of something
Yeah.
having worked. So moment marketing is absolutely great. Moment marketing is, can be very high ROI, but it's also a resource intensive exercise. I mean, I think sports particularly does it quite well. So when I was at Star Sports, of course, it's a part of the basic routine, right? As a broadcaster, you need to make the most of the moment
Yeah.
and maximize. But I think most organizations or most companies mistake moment marketing to for just the creativity and
Mm.
just a meme, right? Whereas it's got a lot of, I would say, effort and blood and sweat and tears
Yeah.
behind it. And organizations which are able to invest in that have got a much greater chance of hitting
Mm.
gold more consistently.
Okay. Great. Great. So, Sudhir, tell me, like a lot of things we have discussed, tell me something that you have learned from your mistake over the years and is today, a strict no in marketing from your side.
Interesting question again. So I think maybe I think two things. I mean, I can share as things that I try and stay conscious of, and I try and also keep my teams thinking about. So one is, uh, I think the biggest no or a watch out as a marketer for me, and it's actually got to do with the way the marketing function is
Yeah, yeah.
structured, right? It's As marketers, we find ourselves at the center of almost all departments and multiple
Hmm.
work streams, right? There is definitely an element of working with the sales team. There is an element of working with agencies, right? A lot of
Yeah.
work happens
Hmm.
is
Yes, yes.
outsourced, isn't it? There's an element of working with HR, element of working with, I would say, logistics and supply chain, finance. So in marketing, it's very easy, I think, always to confuse activity for
Hmm. Hmm.
achievement. You can come to office, you can work for 8 hours, you can do what I like to call, the job of the chief
Hmm. Hmm.
integration officer, because you're always
Yeah.
integrating things in marketing. You're trying to get one department to talk to another. You're trying to,
Hmm.
project
Yeah.
manage so much. And while the process remains very important and all of this needs to be done, I think as marketers, it's very important to also keep enough time to think about what are we doing to create disruption
Hmm.
and impact, and not get caught up in, my God, I
Yeah.
worked so hard because I've
Yeah.
done eight
Yeah.
meetings, right? So not mistaking activity for achievement is one big no in marketing,
Hmm.
according to me, right? You need to be clear about the
Yeah.
impact, and while the activity will remain, just make sure that as as marketing professionals, we are creating enough
Hmm.
space. Now, if it means that you need to block half an hour on a calendar every day,
Yeah.
please do that. If it means that you keep 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday for that, do that. It works differently for different people, but it's important to have that
Yeah.
realization. I think that's one, right? Second is, I think, and this is something that I'm seeing a lot happen a lot now, and I'm seeing it happen a lot in, let's say, fast-paced industries like media and possibly
Hmm.
consumer tech, right? Is, given the amount of work we churn out now, right? There is also a tendency to, I think, be possibly be tactical with many partners that we work with. And I think for marketing organizations, most definitely, nurturing the ecosystem
Yeah.
is very,
Hmm.
very important. So, treating your creative agency plus social media agency plus media agency plus anybody that you
Yes, yes.
collaborate with, right? They need to feel like they're an
Yeah.
extension of the
Yeah.
company. And it's only those organizations which manage to do that, that manage to get the
Work
best
out. Yeah.
out from
Yeah.
from the partners, right? So I think the beautiful thing is, if you look at it, the same agency that works for
Hmm.
Fevicol, right,
Yeah.
works for five other brands. But why is it that they do the
Hmm.
best work for
Hmm.
Fevicol?
Correct. Yeah.
And Fevicol is known
Hmm.
as the best example. Or let's
Ah.
take
Correct.
Zomato, right? People who are working on Zomato, I'm sure they work
Yeah.
on many other
Correct.
brands. But why is it that their work doesn't stand out for
Hmm.
all other brands? And it's got to do with the way Zomato must be
Yeah.
engaging with the partners. And it's got to do with the way
Hmm.
Fevicol engages. It's got to do with the way Cadbury engages
Yeah.
with its
Hmm.
partners, right? So I think no matter how much work we do and how quickly we need to get it done, and how much operational misses are there, I think nurturing the ecosystem is very, very
Okay.
important.
And how do you plan to, continuously keep evolving with what is happening and continuously, upgrade yourself if that is the correct way to say?
Yeah, once again, very interesting question. I think, in my view, I think it's linked to like evolution and growth, and it may vary individual to
Yeah.
individual. So personally, what has always worked for me is, I've seen some people invest very
Yeah.
actively into reading, and that gives them strong dividends. It gives them new ideas. It just makes sure that there is, ideation and
Yeah.
innovation happening in their minds. Personally, I like to keep aside time to meet people outside of my regular
Hmm.
interaction zone. So I like to meet people. And LinkedIn and social media, some of the social media
Yeah.
networks are
Hmm. Hmm.
great
Hmm.
there,
Yes. Yes.
isn't it? So, yes, just to meet people, to hear their ideas, just to meet people from, like I said earlier, people who are solving similar problems, and
Hmm.
just to hear from them. I typically like to keep about a couple of hours per week just
Hmm.
for these conversations. And that just ensures that, there are fresh thinking and fresh ideas coming into my world, and I'm not getting caught into the
Hmm.
echo chamber, which can happen at times, right? Because we work so closely with our teams, we spend so much time at work and
Yeah.
solving the problem that unless we allow for
Hmm.
some fresh thinking, either by reading or by meeting new people, or just taking a break from time to time and just recharging, uh, that it I mean, those are the two or three things that I can just very quickly share with you. I'm not much
Hmm.
of a reader,
Yeah.
very honestly. I like to kind of meet people, hear from them, and be outdoors as
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
as
Correct.
possible.
Yeah. To learn from what is you just by seeing, people and how they are working and what they're thinking. Yeah. Correct.
No,
Correct.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think the great thing is that as you start going deeper into anything, and you will see the parallels,
Yeah.
that exist in terms of
Yeah.
problem
Correct.
solving, right?
I also
So
think
the
just by,
patterns,
maybe if you just start walking and just start observing people around, you might get a lot of, ideas on how people think, what they are doing, a lot of, that also helps in generating a lot of ideas for maybe next campaign or something like that. Yeah.
no, 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 absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. You are so right, Swaraj. I think because and classically, companies would do this very well. I think we possibly, as marketers, are guilty of not
Yeah.
doing that as well now. But when I used to be at Cadbury, it was mandated that before you met 50 consumers, you couldn't speak in the
Yeah. Correct.
brand
Correct.
meetings.
Yeah.
So you have
I've
to go
just
to
seen
and
like
talk
some
to
of
people,
the
right?
agencies
Saying,
where their account managers, they just give them one day off and they just ask them to go and see around the city what is exactly happening with the people, how they're eating, how they're behaving in joints, how they are, just see and get an idea and then come back with fresh minds to work on the idea better. Yeah, so I think that is absolutely
no, no,
very
absolutely,
important.
absolutely. In fact, and you're so right to say. I mean, I again share an interesting story, and this is something that happened in my first brand. I used to
Yeah.
work on a brand called Halls, and Halls
Correct.
is
Yeah.
like Vicks, very simply put.
Hmm.
It's a throat lozenge, right? And the attempt was to make sure that how can you communicate the cooling that
Yeah.
Halls
Hmm.
has in a fun way. And I do remember, some of the people from the creative agency actually taking a
Hmm.
bus, right, in Bombay, half an hour on the bus, and then you get off and have halls because the person that we are targeting is
Yeah.
mostly a blue
Hmm.
collar worker. And, that's the kind of role the brand
Yeah.
plays in their lives. And at the end of that experience, actually, somebody in the team said that, it feels like I've been hugged by
Yeah.
a polar bear.
Yeah.
And that actually became the campaign. And this is one of those very interesting
Yeah.
advertising anecdotes on how just getting out of the boardroom and ideating on the street
Yeah,
can give you a
true,
creative
true.
idea. So it's very
Yeah,
important to do that, whether it's consumer immersions, whether it's meeting people outside your walk of life,
yeah,
whether it's reading, right, just to get the new ideas. But I think it's important to
yeah,
consciously
yeah,
do
yeah.
that.
True, true, true. So, Sudhir, I think we are like close to our time. So, one last question that I would like to know is what is basically your plan for the brand in 2022, and what listeners and people, the consumers and everybody can expect.
Swaraj, like I said earlier, you know, at CARS24, I truly believe that there's a very exciting opportunity
Yeah,
to create a brand and business. And I kind of personally love our ambition of creating the largest
yeah,
automotive
yeah,
business in
yeah,
India,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And globally, across the world. And I think the key marketing task for us is, people are already transacting for pre-used cars, but they're doing it offline. How can
yeah,
we kind
yeah.
of get them
Correct.
online, right? Our awareness levels are very healthy already. We've been advertising for the last 3 years, and we've
Yeah,
been in business for 6 years, right? So I think we are now looking from a marketing perspective to move beyond
yeah,
awareness, and how can we position Cars24 as the best
yeah.
destination to buy high quality cars, not just
True,
online, but
true,
online and offline, right? Anyone who thinks about buying a pre-used car should just
true,
come to
true, true.
Cars24. So building trust and advocacy for the brand are two
Yeah,
key
yeah,
focus areas. I think we have already made some very unique investments
yes.
like mega refurbishment labs, which can help us drive associations on
Yes, yes.
quality and trust. So, very happy to share with everyone that we have just shot our next campaign last week actually at the Daru Heda MRL. So, it's actually based in our MRL, and it's been shot with a celebrity that I won't name. I would
Stay
want the
tuned. Yeah.
listeners to discover it
Yeah.
in a week or so. Yeah, as it gets released. We are also working on some exciting partnerships in the area of sports and sports franchises, which we feel can further strengthen our trust
Hmm.
and stature as a brand. So, there is a lot of effort that the marketing team is making, like I said, to build trust and advocacy for Cars24 and really make Cars24 the singular brand that people think about as they think about
Well,
buying a pre-used car.
well, thank you so much, Sudhir. It was like absolutely lovely talking to you, and I think I need another episode with you. There is so much to talk about. So we really appreciate your time coming in and talking to us. And any last words for the listeners?
No, I think I just want
Yeah.
to say a big thanks, Varaj. I think, and Simran, I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I think just for the listeners, I think do watch out for some of the things which we are doing in marketing. And any feedback that you have and any ideas that you have that you feel can make our marketing efforts better, please feel free to reach out. I would
All
love to
right.
hear from everyone.
So, to all our listeners, if you like today's episode, do follow and like us on all our social media channels. And until next time, stay safe, everybody, and have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sudhir. Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.